how to coach for beginners. So today we're going to learn about how to coach a really simple basic structure where you can then learn to either coach yourself or others to your goals, the way you want to orientate your life, and to be really, really specific in the way you're approaching things like your career, your relationships, your health, your hobbies, whatever it may be. So first of all, we need to define what is coaching. So like I've already said, coaching is about moving towards a goal. It's about reorientating your life so that you're very specific about what you're trying to achieve. There are many distinctions from coaching which it is not. So coaching, although it might be its next door neighbour, it's not therapy. Therapy is far too personal. Therapy is about overcoming very personable obstacles. So things like trauma, things like perhaps childhood issues. Coaches aren't trained to deal with all that stuff that really sits deep in our bones. So, as a coach, draw a distinction between what is goal orientated, what is future thinking, and what potentially is kind of the dregs of the past. Coaching is also not consulting, so a consultant would come in, they would hear your problem, and they would assist you with their expertise in achieving an outcome. Coaching, on the other hand, the coachee really is the ones with the solution, and the coach is more so assisting, collaborating, and helping them guide themselves. Coaching is also not lecturing or teaching. With lecturing or teaching, the power dynamic is much more skewed towards the lecturer slash teacher. They have the expertise, they have the answers. In coaching, it's quite the reverse. The coachee is the one being empowered and guided by themselves, although assisted by the coach. As a coach, you really need to respect the discipline and not veer too far into others if you're not trained, because it's potentially harmful to the coachee or just simply not helpful. When it actually comes to coaching and sitting down with someone, the first thing that someone is going to do is they're going to start talking to you about a problem, an issue, or a concern they have. They're always going to start like that. It could be absolutely anything. It could be their diet, it could be their business, it could be something that you just do not anticipate whatsoever. Now, fundamentally, coaching is about expanding someone's awareness on an issue or a topic of theirs so they can gain greater insight on that and overcome their own obstacles. Now, that sounds very simple, but it's far less simple in practice, okay? But just bear that in mind. Imagine their awareness is a little ball, and with your help, they are trying to grow and grow and grow it to think differently, to gain a greater perspective, so that what they once thought was an issue perhaps no longer even is the question or the problem that they're answering. So, back to the beginning of the session, they're going to be talking a lot, they're going to be talking about their issue. At this point, the coach's role is to listen, okay? So, let's clarify what listening is. Listening is simply not just sitting in front of someone and hearing what they've got to say, okay? A coach wants to get as close to a coachee as possible. What do I mean by this? So, try and enter their frame of reference, try and understand, empathize with their reality as much as you can. Really try and get in their shoes. How do they feel about what they're speaking about? What are they feeling right now in the room? Any coach's guidance, advice, comments, they have to be from this position of understanding exactly where the client is at. Now, here comes the next distinction, that the coach's job is to not to commiserate whatever it is the coachee is telling them, okay? You listen to them, but you don't take it at face value, okay? So it's kind of like a contrast there. I'm going to listen to everything you've got to say, really take it in, really understand where they're coming from. However, I'm not taking it as face value. I'm just understanding what it is that you think. Now, by not taking it at face value, what I can then also begin to do in the back of my mind is begin to just log my own distinctions and my own discrepancies and my own curiosities and any other thoughts that just come to me. And this is the stuff that you then begin to use to just gently prod or probe around their awareness. At some point in the coaching conversation, every single coach will wonder, why on earth they're telling me this? It feels like waffle, it feels irrelevant. Now, here is another fundamental rule of coaching. Everything your coachee is telling you is for a reason. That just the fact that they choose to focus on this topic or speak about this speaks volumes about who they are, even though it might seem irrelevant or quite nonchalant. But they're doing it for a reason. It might not be for the reason you expect. So you need to remain curious about that. So let's say, for example, they're telling you about their dinner last night, or just what they've been up to this week, or something they saw in the news. It's irrelevant. They're probably not a politician or a editor of a newspaper. It's not really relevant to their day. But perhaps what they are doing is they're subtly, or not so subtly, avoiding what they actually want to talk about. And that is pivotal information for the coach. Oh, I wonder if you're feeling a bit out of sorts, or you're feeling a bit nervous or cautious of approaching what it is you really came to coaching for. And then they might go, yes. But if the coach was never curious as to why they were telling them that, and they just dismissed it, then they would have never got to the root of the problem. And that brings me to my second fundamental law, which is for the coach to constantly ask himself, what is it about what the coachee is talking about that presents a problem for them? So going back to that example, why is this avoidance creating a problem? It's because they feel deeply uncomfortable with what they've got to talk about. And then you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. But you must fundamentally, as a coach, remain curious to, why are they telling me this? And why does this present a problem? Now, if you just start off with the basics of those two questions while you're listening to someone and really, really trying to understand what they've got to say, then it's a great starting point. And eventually, the coach is then going to need to contribute to this conversation, because it's not just all about listening. And this is where you begin to step on the edges of their awareness. Now, there's lots of different ways you can do this. You might simply ask for a clarification on an aspect of what they're telling you. You might ask, I'm wondering if you see some sort of like discrepancy in what they're telling you, or perhaps you think to yourself, I get the feeling that this is an issue for them. So you might just say, I'm wondering if it's an issue of clashing, or I'm wondering if it's an issue of you not being able to communicate with this person. I'm wondering if it's an issue of they're potentially not hearing you, or you're not hearing them. You fundamentally can't collaborate. You ask for a clarification of an underlying belief, such as, do you believe that when you give work to your team, they'll be able to do it to a higher standard? And then they might say to you, categorically no. And then again, there presents a whole new avenue of stuff to get into. But let me just clarify for you themes from which a coach can then begin to introject into the conversation. Clarifications, digging into the story, specific challenges. Then at some point in the conversation, you're going to kind of have this aha moment. Both the coach and the coachee will come to a feeling of, this is the stuff we've been looking at, and I need to kind of process this before I can move forward and potentially take some actions off the back of that. So once you've kind of got to whatever it is what you really need to do then is create some actions and some accountability with the coachee. So that will be whether it be like a weekly goal, a monthly goal, a set of tasks, a timeline. You've got SMART goals. If willing, set them an action, set them a task, when they need it done by, and that will then be the kind of full circle of problem to solution. And then all you've really got to do is follow up with that. Equally, I would strongly advise that coaching clients are kind of reflecting for themselves in between sessions. So although they might get a lot out of each session with you, they can get so much more if they actively engage in the process of self-reflection outside of, which they will do naturally, right? If you're stepping on their stuff during the session, they're going to be on the drive home or on the train home thinking, oh yeah, like I do that, or yeah, I really should try and change that. So perhaps encourage them to do some visualization, some journaling, just having some frank conversations that you know they haven't had in a long time. Whatever it may be, encourage all of that. However, what I would say, and this goes throughout the whole process, be mindful of how hard you're pushing a coaching client, because say someone comes to you and they are morbidly obese and they might want to just get into shape, get a lot fitter or whatever. If you push them too hard too soon, they're going to get overwhelmed and they're going to quit. And this is kind of goes hand in hand with the listening. You need to be very compassionate towards people. Some people might come in, talk about some stuff, maybe realise, oh yeah, I'm getting close to some ideas here, but then go, oh, I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready for it. Now, if that persists, fair enough. Maybe they're not right for you. They'll be wasting their time, wasting their money. But give people the agency to come to the actions that they want in their own time. Yes, some people might show up ready to kind of be enslaved to the advice of a coach, but that's not really excellent coaching. Truly, we want to expand coaching clients' awareness to the point where they see so clearly what they're trying to achieve and feel empowered enough to do so, because again, they've conquered so much of that self-awareness that they don't see what's holding them back as obstacles. Last point, there's also many themes that exist in coaching clients. So people pleasing, egotism, micromanagement, parents that were unavailable, spouses that are disconnected, whatever these things may be. You don't need to rewrite the rulebook by yourself. That's everything. Thank you so much. I hope that this helps you coach yourself or others. Watch my other videos if you like. Okay, bye.